and welcome. I'm pleased today to have with me Harpreet Christie, who's a realtor in my community of Lloydminster, Alberta, Canada. Harpreet has positioned herself as an accomplished and respected realtor, and she offers her clients an outstanding level of service with her many years of experience in purchasing, owning, and selling property, which allows her to excel at every level of the real estate transaction. Hi, welcome, Harpreet.
Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good.
We're here today to learn more about the various services that realtors can provide just beyond selling and buying homes, and to look at the benefits that a realtor can have for divorcing families. All right, so let's jump in. Of course, Harpreet, you can help families to buy and sell homes, but what are some of the other ways that separating and divorcing families could help realtors? Realtors could help families who are separating.
Um, we could help out a lot of families that are in the process of separating by giving them market evaluations, letting them know exactly how much their homes are worth. Because when they do go through that process, they will, likely need to know if one's going to purchase one out or if they're going to sell the property and divide funds. There's things like that. But then we also go beyond that by letting them know what they can do to potentially increase profit in their homes, if there's items that need to be fixed, if there's items that they just shouldn't even touch and do to make it a smooth sale for them as well.
So it sounds like the earlier that families reach out to a realtor, the better, because a repair, for example, might take a little bit of time by the time you decide to do the repair and actually get the repair done, and sort of to even get it into a position of being able to list and sell the home.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always good to, if you know you're going to sell your home, then definitely contact your local realtor, and they will provide that information to you, and they could actually tell you a good timeline, because it depends. Are they going to do it themselves? Are they hiring a professional person to do it? So we usually have a good idea on a timeline for them.
So the phone call is the first thing, right? Just picking up the
Yes.
phone and getting started. So how would you approach a situation when you hear that a family is separating? What can families expect when they get a realtor involved, as far as that first phone call, and how does that look?
The first phone call is usually um, very the delicate call, I call them. It's very important that in that first call you explain to all parties that you're there for them. You have to build a form of trust in the end. You have to make sure that they understand that I'm working for their best interest, and I have to treat all parties equally as well. So that's basically the first thing, we usually figure out and get a game plan organized as to how we go about with communicating, explaining to each party, the next steps in selling their homes and so forth. Does that make sense?
You would be a little bit of a mediator of sorts, it sounds like, where you're sort of that go-between, you're the neutral that, although you have the one person is the typically one person will reach out before the other, but one person reaches out, and then that person doesn't have to be the one to communicate. You can actually be the one that communicates
Yes.
with both parties.
Yeah, exactly. And that's usually what happens. One person usually is the one that reaches out first. And then once you get, like, for instance, getting an evaluation done, you have to send it out to all parties, and you have to be on neutral grounds. And basically, you're holding everybody's hands throughout the whole process.
One of the things you described to me earlier is that, sort of from a realtor standpoint, it's almost double the work than it is with an intact family, because what you're doing is you're you're not just having one phone call where that one person relays it to the other, and you're not often having group calls. It's often, you're talking with one of them, and then you have to go and give that same information, relay that same information to the other person,
Right.
at a separate time.
Right.
Yeah, 'cause
Exactly.
every divorcing family is, of course, in a different situation where, sometimes you can have a three-way call, and sometimes they are not even on speaking terms. So I imagine it would be very different depending on the situation, and you'd really have to figure that out in that initial call of
Yeah.
what is that level of conflict between the families,
Right.
between the parties.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about that process from start to finish. Lots of people who have purchased a home while they're together, maybe they haven't sold a home before. So how can you describe it really succinctly as far as generally speaking what that process would look like from start to finish?
Yeah, absolutely. So from start to finish, basically the process would be figuring out how much your home's worth. Once you
Mhm.
have that figured out and all parties agree on a suggested list price, then the next step would be the whole listing process. Get the contracts drawn up, send it to both parties to sign. Then you got the photographer involved. You do the walkthrough, you make sure the home is staged properly. So there's a number of things, and we usually have listing presentations. I have a listing presentation that I
Okay.
present to all my clients, so they have a good idea on every single step of the way what's going to happen next. And of course, it's my job to let them know as well.
Yeah. So, so then, if both parties are on title, of course, then both parties are going to have to sign
Yes, yes,
every step of the way. And so, there would be the listing that would be, of course, involved with both parties, and then there's the showing of the homes that
right.
would, possibly have both. Well, I suppose not anyone involved because you'd be the one showing the home.
Well, yeah, and so
Mhm.
when there are showings in the home, you need to get the feedback after that showing. So of course you got
Mhm.
to relay the information to both parties as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and then
Because it's crucial.
any offer that comes in, of course, then that ends up being, you have to get both parties involved. And
Yep.
so it sounds like, at every
And
step of the
negotiating,
way. Yeah.
yeah, there's the negotiating process, and that's
Yeah.
another step, right? Like that's
Yeah.
almost like towards you go through listing the house, getting everything organized to the showings,
Mm, mhm,
and then you get the feedback from the showings, you finally get an offer, and then that's where it becomes a very that's where your clients have to trust you as your realtor because you are representing both parties' best interests. So you
mhm,
have to give both party equal information and never side with one another. And I think that's one of the big key things too
mhm,
when dealing with divorced couples. You have to make sure whatever you do is done equally amongst all of them.
mhm. Yeah, trust
Yeah,
and trust needs to be built up for sure,
yeah.
for sure. So there's tons of realtors out there, of course. So how would someone know what qualities to look for in a realtor when they're choosing, in particular with respect to separating families?
You know, we did talk about this earlier, and the big thing is, of course, you want to choose the realtor that you're most comfortable with, but the number one thing is the one you trust the most that will handle the sale of your home. And that's the biggest thing is making sure you're comfortable with your realtor, you trust your realtor, and that person, that realtor has to learn to make sure that they communicate with all parties. There's a whole bunch of things that
Mm-hmm.
go in, but that client will definitely know who they're going to choose because there's usually a relationship in the initial meeting when you do your evaluation because there's a number of realtors out there, and of course if you're in a divorce situation you might not only want to find out how much your home is worth from one realtor, you might want to ask a couple of them, and when you do ask a couple of them and you meet the other realtors, you'll know which one that you're going to feel comfortable
Mm-hmm.
with,
Mm-hmm.
because at that point it's our job to present our information to them
Mm-hmm.
as to what we're going to do through the whole process.
Mhm. Yeah, and the old idea of the know like trust factor, and within what 3 to 7 seconds, you really
Yeah.
get a sense of a person, and so
Mhm.
making a few different phone calls and seeing who you connect with the
Yes.
most and who you think is going to be the best person to help you and your family. And of course, the added difficulty can be if one person chooses you as a realtor, then what happens if the other person doesn't feel as comfortable? And so, you being able to be that person that's not only got the know, like, trust factor from the one person who initiates the phone call, but you have to then you as a realtor then have to be able to develop that know, like, trust factor with the other person pretty
Yes.
quickly.
Yes, you do. And you know
Mhm.
what? It's happened in the past. I've had clients where the one party wants me regardless as their agent, and the other party's like, absolutely not. They want somebody else,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because it's that being comfortable, right?
Mhm.
And maybe they feel that you're not there representing both best parties' interests. So I've teamed up with agents in the past, you know,
Oh,
to
okay.
help the sellers through the process. So you can have two agents co-list a property, and each agent is representing their seller. So
Okay.
it's happened before. So that's another option.
Yeah. So in that kind of a case, would the each party would sort of pick their realtor. So it wouldn't have to
Yes.
be that you don't have to have a relationship with the other realtor. It can be their choice as the separating
Yeah.
spouse's choice as to
Yeah.
who to list it.
And then when there's an offer involved, of
Mm-hmm.
course, us agents talk to each other, explain, and you bring it back to your own clients.
Mm.
So and that very rarely happens. Um, but and again, it's trusting, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
but that could be really helpful, especially in higher conflict separations,
mhm.
right?
Yes.
Where there really isn't a single ounce of trust, and you know, but again, at the end of the day, you need to choose someone to list your house. Well, it
Yeah.
sounds like maybe you can actually choose two people to sell your house.
Yeah.
No, that's
It's
a
very rare that it happens,
yeah,
but it
yeah.
and that's the thing. Every situation is different, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, so as part of every interview that I do, I have my favorite part of the interview, which is my top 3 tips. So,
yep.
what I'd like to do is I'd like to get your top 3 tips as families embark on the possibility of selling their home and working with a realtor. So, let's have it. Tip number one.
Okay. Tip number one, make sure you choose a realtor that you trust. That's very important.
Mhm.
Throughout the whole entire process, you have to feel comfortable with your agent.
Mhm.
Number two would be the level of confidentiality. You know that the agent
Mhm.
has. We have to abide by rules, and confidentiality is a huge one of the huge rules in listing one of anybody's property that's going through a divorce. It's the Privacy Act, things like that. People don't need to know what's happening if a couple's divorcing,
So you mean
and those are things.
in the context of when there's someone like a showing of a home or something,
Mhm.
and the people ask, the potential buyers are asking, sort of what's the, why are these people selling?
Yeah,
That's the confidentiality that you're talking about.
yeah. Yeah, like you don't have to disclose what's happening with the sellers, right? And
Mhm.
that's going to be initial conversation you have when originally listing their house,
Mhm.
anyways,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And my last is communicating. Make sure they have good communicating, like they communicate with all parties equally. That's very important
Mhm.
as well.
And that neutrality, right?
Yep,
The
yep.
neutrality. Okay, well, thank you so much, Harpreet, for joining us, and for giving our viewers some tips on how to sell their home, and not even necessarily sell their home, but even more so, learning how to figure out what the value of their home might be, or to increase the value. There's so many different services that a realtor can provide,
Yes.
and I hope that this helps our viewers as they embark on their separation and divorce. So thanks so
Perfect. Thank
much.
you so much for having me, Stephanie.
Yeah.